Could be living in a dream. Feel the world is at our feet, and our hearts in the right place. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. Sun above, sky is golden. We run free like a river, carried away in the moment. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. I never knew magic like this. The clouds have fallen to the sea, and I never knew happiness like this. Now I breathe easy. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. Time quietly slips away, a perfect day. I spent so long under a storm cloud.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for joining us. We've got several agenda items here. At our first meeting, we're going to have a regular meeting of the City Council, from which there is a few items on there, and I do have some speaker cards related to that. When this meeting concludes, we'll go into a study session from which many of you are, I believe, are here for. I want to thank you and welcome you to our City Council meeting. So I'd like to call our regular meeting of the December 9, 2019 City Council meeting to order. Please take the roll call, clerk.
Mayor Hartke,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember McClymans,
Here.
Councilmember Wong,
Here.
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Orlando,
Here.
quorum.
Thank you, City Clerk. Our invocation will be led by Lead Pastor Shay Ferguson of Freedom for Life Church, and our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Mark Stewart. Pastor.
Thank you for the privilege and honor to come up and pray over you. And we as a church want to say thank you to our city council and the many leaders in the room for all you do for our city. So let's pray. Father, thank you for the opportunity and the blessing of meeting together in a city that you have blessed. And we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for the outpouring that you have shown on our city. And we pray and ask you that you would continue to bless this city, that you would guide us in wisdom, that you would lead our mayor, our city council, our first responders in wisdom and discernment as they move forward with our city. Jesus, may you give just a sense of brotherly love amongst this community, that we care for one another. We put you and each other above our own selves so that we might serve our community well. God, we thank you for the blessings that you have poured out. We pray that you continue to lead. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Ferguson. Thank you, Councilmember Stewart. Council, we've got 8 items on our consent agenda, but there is also, I know I had called in and a couple others, presentation on item number 8 as well. And this also reflects with our study session, item number 2 and item number 14. So I would rather that we condense all of those to this conversation. But before then, I also have 2 speaker cards related to item number 6. So I would like to invite our speakers to come up when I call your name, and please state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes to address council. First, we have Richard Hildebrand. Mr. Hildebrand. Good to see you again, sir.
Good, and you? Same to you. How are you doing?
Great.
Good, good. Good evening. No short notice here. I'm Richard Hildebrand, live at 14444 East Riggs Road. My property borders the Mountain View Estates land. I'm right next door. And I just found out about this meeting about 30 minutes ago. But in the past 7 meetings, all I got from the city council here is my issue with this irrigation ditch is a private issue. Now, it really falls in the city council and the planning and zoning department to say, hey, guys, stop. Get this thing rectified before we go any further. Everybody keeps trying to push it under the rug. But, and you keep saying, hey, developer, Mr. Keeler, get with Mr. Hildebrand, work it out. Well, for 6 months, 7 months, have not had a meeting with Mr. Keeler, regardless of what he says. They have not had a meeting with my attorney. They talked to my attorney one time in the last 30 days. And they said, we're going to send it to our attorney and have it worked out. How can you work something out if you never even meet the opposition? I mean, you just sweep it under the rug and say, hey, we can't work with them. This is you guys' job here. Say, hey, if they don't have a meeting with them, why are you wanting to go forward? Exactly. Why are you wanting to go forward? Because, hey, either that or you're rubber stamping it. Because this issue is a big issue. They talked to RWCD. RWCD has talked to them a couple times. RWCD has the same concerns I have. Well, we're going to work with them. We're going to work with them. Not one phone call. Not one. So it's sort of up to you guys' hands to say, hey, work it out. Stop the damn thing, get it done, or get something. At least have a meeting with the guy. It's up to you guys. Each and every one of you. Otherwise, you're just rubber stamping it and running it untrue. That's all I had to say. If you have any questions, fine. But I have had no meeting, no contact with. Only contact I had with Mr. Keeler was about 15 minutes after the last meeting, right out here. Oh, I'm going to get back with you. Never hear nothing. So, you guys' hands.
Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hildebrand. Councilmember Orlando, Mr. Hildebrand, please.
So at our last meeting, the council, said to go work it out. I get all that. But my question to you, sir, is did we give him a direct answer as to whether you wanted that buried or not?
The last I heard from you, I believe it was, that they were going to not bury it. And now I hear that there's a possibility that they're talking about burying it. My question is, I've asked for a hydrologist to make sure it works. RWC wants the hydrologist to see the hydrologist work, to see if it will work. Because they're afraid that if it don't work, and sure, I don't get my water if it don't work. But it floods out about 40 other people above me.
So I guess okay, let me rephrase the question. I didn't tell you that, but because I was on the phone, if you remember correctly. My question to you is very, very succinct. For you, you want staff or want us to do something, correct?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, this was approved. My question still to you is, if you want staff to enforce the provision to have it buried, we have to let staff know that.
Right, and
Okay.
what we did is staff did know about that. I give, at the last, when we talked out here, he said, well, we can leave it the way it is. But I said, the only reason why that I'm against leaving it the way it is the way you're putting it in there to where it cannot be maintained.
Okay, and I get all that.
Right.
So my question to you is, if something is buried, do they automatically do the hydraulic or the hydraulic test, ensure that the water flow is properly happening?
Yeah, if it's buried, they need to have a hydrologist to make sure it's going to work,
Okay.
so that nobody gets flooded.
So again, we're doing a circle here. I'm asking you, as the owner of that property, what do you want us to do? Staff to enforce our ordinances, which is clearly there that you have to bury it.
I understand that.
Want us to, or you want us to just sit here and look at you and say, sir, I mean, I'm frustrated with this whole project. I've been involved with this since day one, like many members up here. But I'm asking you, what do you want to do?
Okay.
And then put that in writing, which I had also suggested to you months ago, and the developer, to put that in writing to say, I want this to be done to my property, to enforce the ordinance. Then we can enforce the ordinance as a staff.
Right. And this is what I said last time, at the last meeting, and the meeting before that, and the meeting before that.
Is
Okay,
what?
If the city prefers to have it underground, and which is going to be the easiest thing for them as far as maintenance and everything, then all I want it to do is work. I don't want it to work for one or two instances and then the thing plug up. I want the hydraulic to say it will work. And if it works, then I'm fine with it. I'm very fine with it.
Okay, and we get all that. So here's my suggestion to you. What I heard you just say is if the city wants to bury it, that's not the question here, sir. The question is, do you want it buried?
Well, personally, I would love it buried.
You do not?
Personally, I would love it buried. Yes.
Okay.
But like I say, I want it to work.
Okay,
And
so,
RWCD wants it to work.
so if you don't want it buried, sir,
If you know, I would love it to be buried. Yes, I would like it to be buried. But it's got to work. Now, if it's not buried, then we need to work out a compromise. Who's going to maintain it
understand.
and the maintenance and all that there. I mean, you got two options, both options there. And Seth can go with the easiest one as long as it works.
Okay.
That's all I want.
So I hope we're in agreement here. You want it buried, which then gives direction to staff in the planning and zoning department to support the ordinance, right? Okay,
Okay, now, burying it is one thing and making it work is another. Your definition of burying it is dig a trench, put it underground, 3 feet underground, put some dirt on top of it, call it good. It will not work that way.
and I'm assuming, sir, and again, I may be wrong, but there must be a process in which, and maybe staff could help you with that. There must be a process where the water district looks at this and say this is feasible or not as a part of signing off that process.
That's
Am I correct?
exactly right. And
Okay.
RWCD Water District has talked to Seth and said that if you're going to dig a trench 3 feet deep and throw that pipe in there, it's not going to work.
They've already said that to
They've
you.
already said that. Because my elevation on my property is only about 3 inches or less different than the elevation of the beginning of where this property is. So you put the pipeline 3 feet underground, put that pipeline below grade, and it will not flush.
Okay. Then
Perfect. I mean, just simple.
again, sir, I apologize. I'm not a hydrologist.
Right.
I'm not a.
But
you
I
know,
mean,
don't-
you can just picture it. I mean, you got,
Vice
water don't
Mayor,
flow
roll, please.
uphill. So you got property level
Got it.
here, you got
Understand.
pipeline down here.
Got it, understand.
You know.
You
Vice
can't
Mayor.
dig deeper?
Pardon?
You can't dig deeper?
Yeah, there's only one way to make the thing work, and that's to put the pipeline about 7 feet deep to where you can put enough push at the head in to where it will flush the pipeline and it will be empty. They don't want to do it that way.
My issue has always been, sir, and I will get to Councilmember Lopez, obviously, I don't want to. My issue has always been is, what do you want to do? And then we'll enforce that as a
Okay.
community. We'll do that for you because that's what you're asking.
Yes,
Once we get that decision, again, the other aspects of permitting and flow and stuff like that, that has to be worked out, obviously,
Right.
between the final authority that says, yes, this will work.
I understand
Okay,
that,
we're
and
good.
I've been waiting on a call from them to say, hey, let's get with our hydrologist, show you that our idea will work. No phone calls, no nothing.
Okay,
And
Got
this
it.
is the issue, because.
thank you, Mr. Hillenbrand.
Vice Mayor.
This is an interesting conversation because I feel like we've had it before. The discussion that we've had with the city attorney, the city manager, and in this council chambers is that this issue is a civil matter between you and this developer.
Okay.
And there's been some suggestion that we're rubber stamping something. We've spent 8 months to a year going back and forth trying to figure this out. So it is, I applaud you for coming to try and get the city to fix this, but I will tell you, I'm going to reiterate what the city's position is that this is an issue between you and the developer.
Okay, I understand that.
And I will ask, is that correct?
Mayor, if I may, Vice Mayor Rowe, this is a civil matter between two private property owners and is not within the purview of the cities. They need to resolve it, and it is beyond the purview of the city at this point. The city is looking at the uses on the property and how they're platted out.
Vice Mayor and City Attorney, I have one question for you. Has the law changed for the rules which the city changed in the last 10 years on problems with developments or as handling them.
You know, my statement was pretty much just a statement. I don't really want to have a debate or discussion.
Reason why I'm asking.
But thank you for your,
Reason why I'm asking.
thank you very much.
Hold on, I'm not gonna move until I get through. When Valero and Falcon Estates was established, Falcon Estates was established from the same developer, just an arm from the same developer.
Mr. Hildebrand, I think
I know,
we're giving
but
you your
the
minutes,
city of
but this
Chandler-
is, no, Mr. Hildebrand, this is only in response to questions.
I understand
so-
that, but the city of Chandler worked it out and said, you know what? You guys stop, and we're gonna stop until you resolve it, and that was it. City of Chandler did that.
Mr. Hilder, I'm going to go on, and I do want to thank you. I did see that Daphne Hildebrand had yielded her time to her husband, but I think we've given ample. Also have a card from Reed Jacobson. If you'd like to please come
How
up.
soon
You've
you
got 3
forget me.
minutes as well, sir.
Yeah, it's Reed Jacobson, 4133 Scorpio Place. According to the city code definition of building height, anything that's not a flat roof. I confirmed this afternoon with Mr. DiLatorre. They take the grade to the top plate. So if it's 10 feet, it's 10 feet. They take the top plate to the highest point of the roof, the peak. And they average that. So a 34-foot house with a peaked roof will meet the city's definition of building height at 22 feet. That is what is in the document before you tonight. That's what was told they couldn't do. That was what was always envisioned through these discussions from the beginning of time. They started with 25 feet, then they went to 24 feet. They even came out and measured and showed us what 25 feet would look like. 22 feet is what they settled on because they said they had a builder they were talking to and he had a 21-foot, 11-inch product. If you pass this, I understand you have another chance and you can tell them, no, we won't let you put a 30-foot house in there. But that was never the intention, ever. The intention was an actual height of 22 feet. Just before the Planning Commission meeting, they came in and they said that they wanted to put an RV garage within the 40-foot rear setback, 22 feet high. The Planning Commission was very specific, tell them, no, we can't have an RV garage in the back. They said, how about a height on the accessory buildings? We asked for 10 feet. That was gonna be 10 feet until Commissioner Klob said, if you have a structure, an accessory structure that's 10 feet high to the top, you have to allow 5 feet for a roof. So it was always envisioned that an accessory structure would be limited to 15 feet. I've been in bed for 3 days, so I haven't had a chance to look at any of this till an hour ago. It may very well be that the code does not allow for anything other than actual height of 15 feet for accessory structures. I can't find that yet. But the way it's written, if Mr. DiLatorre is correct, that means they can put a structure in. If they have a top plate of 11 feet, they can put a 10 feet, they can put a structure in of 20 feet high, and they can still satisfy the 15 feet. And that was never the intention of the Planning Commission. I brought this up at the City Council. That should have been changed. That should have been changed after the Planning Commission meeting, but it wasn't changed. And when they put in 22 feet for that, that was an actual height, and that's a huge, huge deal here.
Mr. Jacobson, can you wrap up, please?
That's wrapped.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor.
I would like to ask staff if someone could come up and enlighten us a little bit on.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Jacobson is correct that the way that the zoning code measures building height is to the midpoint of the top of the pitch roof to the eaves. So it doesn't measure to the top of the pitch roof. It actually measures to the midpoint, the average. That is the average between the pitch of that roof and the eaves or the top plate of that house. And that's the way it's been since the 70s when our zoning code was adopted. That's how most of the cities measure building height, so that is no different than how we treat other, and have been treating other subdivisions in the city of Chandler.
So our code has been consistent on that, but is there a communication difference in terms of heights, or what has been your experience here?
Yes, through the mayor. The clarification that there was a desire to measure that building height differently at least didn't register in my mind until city council. And at that point, motion was made and the introduction to the ordinance was adopted with the current language that uses the term building height, which is how the zoning code describes building height.
Okay. Councilmember Orlando.
So during the P and Z hearing, they discussed this at length, the height issue during the.
That's correct.
And the intention was to put a height stipulation on this from the P and Z?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that is correct.
So why didn't that carry over to the council's to council's original adoption last month?
Through the mayor, to clarify, a stipulation was added restricting accessory buildings to no higher than 15 feet in building height. And it also limits the single-family homes to no more than 22 feet in building height. The issue here is how you measure that building height. And that clarification was never communicated properly.
Okay, and is there anything in the meeting minutes from the P and Z that clarified that during the discussion point about what the total height would be of 22 feet?
There may be, through the mayor.
So then I asked that question again, why wasn't it carried over to the ordinance?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, again, that was not clear to staff that was the desire. And again, we have not changed how staff measures building heights. We don't change it for one development over another development.
I get that. I guess my issue, call it communication, call it what you want. The fact of the matter is, it was an ample discussion. It's recorded, maximum feet of 22 feet or whatever that number was, and it wasn't transferred over to this project when it came before this council.
Through the mayor, I believe there's a loss in translation through the process.
So now we have a couple of residents here that expected one thing and they're not going to get it, or is this something staff could work with the developer to make sure they handle the stipulations properly? That was very well communicated by both sides.
Currently, the language states building height, and staff would have to default on the zoning code definition of how you measure that building height.
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
If
So
I
let me go first with our attorney and then Councilmember Stewart.
Mayor, our recommendation is we stay consistent. That is what the development community, what our community, we measure the way it's, unless it is very clear that it's supposed to be measured a certain way, we be consistent with our measurement and the way the code is written. And I would recommend that we continue that way unless the council were to change the condition.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to put on my common sense hat here. You're in charge of the permits that are being issued, correct? So if a plan that comes in is over 22 feet, by rule, you could issue, right? Because of the way that the language is in the ordinance on where so like if I'm in my backyard and there's a 22-foot house behind and it meets the standard, then it's 22 feet. But if it's 32, that doesn't meet it. So how do we reconcile that in this meeting? Because I can't vote for this if the height of the house could be 40 feet, but they just meet the standard of the wall height. I don't get it. I'm not a builder, but can you address that a little bit?
Absolutely, through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart. That is correct. If a permit were to come in for one of the homes and it showed a pitched roof, and the pitched roof was over 22 feet, but the midpoint of that pitched roof, between the top of that pitched roof and the eaves was at 22 feet, then that could be approved by staff because it meets the definition of how you
And the
measure
top could
building
be
height.
32 feet.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, well, that's not a 22-foot height. No?
According to the zoning code, it is.
Okay.
Mayor.
Councilmember Lopez.
So just so I can clarify too, again, since we're clarifying. Building height, 22 feet, that means basic ground to the top of the wall. Then, correct?
Through the mayor, if it's a parapet wall, that would be correct. Yeah, so a
Parapet,
flat,
okay, so a flat roof.
wall.
Okay,
Yes.
so, because I was hearing in the beginning when they're saying that that's the height of the internal walls, not the total height with the roof. But now we're saying, okay, so the height, when we say building heights, we say 22 feet building height. It's the height of the overall building, but then you're taking an average of the rooftop from the overhangs to the top of the roof. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So again, on average, for a single family home with given pitch, depending upon, on average, how big or how many feet does a typical roof add on to a house? 4 feet, 10 feet? Adding on 20 feet or 10 feet means that it's a 20-foot tall roof. Would that be correct?
And through the mayor, Councilmember Lopez, in the example that was given with 10 feet and then a 32-foot height to the top, that would be about 12 feet in addition to the top plate of that wall.
Right, 12 feet on top of the 20, no, it'd be 10 feet. If it's 32 foot high, right? 10 foot on top of 22 is 32, right? So that would actually be a total, per this stipulation, that would put it at 25, then correct? Or no, let's see. 27, sorry, to do the right math. So 22-foot high walls with a 10-foot roof puts you at 32. But you only take half of that per the ordinance to make it 27,
Councilmember,
correct?
Councilmember Lopez. If I could interject here. The developer is more than willing to stick to the spirit of what was intended rather than the technicalities. So 22 feet cap, as well as the same with the the buildings in the back. Again, he is more than willing to address and stick with that. So I think this conversation, I don't know the process at this point of adding a stip or that, but, or what agreements need to be had, but he is more than willing to accommodate, and that was his understanding as well, is what I'm hearing. So, City Attorney.
Mayor, I would recommend that we have the developer come up and state that, and we'll put it in the minutes, and staff will have their direction on enforcement of the ordinance.
Great.
Perfect.
I was going to suggest that.
Mr.
Through the mayor, council, Mr. Mayor made a good point that the housing, the PDP, the preliminary development plans for the housing, is required to come back for approval in the future. And at that point, the staff and the city council can make sure that they abide to the maximum total height, not the average height, but the total height of 22 feet or 15 feet for the accessory buildings. So this council will have another opportunity to make sure that they're abiding by the height restrictions.
I would still like to invite Mr. Keeler to just, as we finish this off, to address that. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Seth Keeler. Address is 1121 West Warner Road, Suite 109, Tempe, Arizona, 85284. I am happy to comply with the spirit of our discussion, which is an actual building height. When you're looking at the building, it's 22 feet tall, not as though the technical thing we've just heard about how it could be measured by the city. So I'm happy to comply with that and put it on record that we'll keep it at 22 feet and the accessory building at 15 feet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any on this particular item, any further? All right, thank you. Also, as part of our study session, we have an introduction of the item number 8, which is an ordinance related to traffic rules of motorized play vehicles. I would also just like to condense our conversations with, as I mentioned, with the 2 on the study session as well. So if I could get a presentation with that. Thank you, Ryan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you noted, this is on your agenda item tonight for regular and study session. And over the course of the last 6 to 12 months, we've been undertaking some research on this program. And we feel that the program that we've identified and are making recommendations to you tonight represent extensive conversations with the community, as well as our experience in dealing with a variety of shared mobility companies. I'm going to turn it over to Jason Crampton, who is the staff expert in this area, to walk you through the presentation with our mobility pilot program, as well as the ordinances that we're recommending.
Yeah. And Jason, if you could just give us a high level, we don't need the complete presentation, and I think there might be a couple questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Okay. So just a little background information. These shared mobility companies are private companies that stage electric scooters and other devices in public rights-of-way for use by the public. Users can then access these via an app, ride them, and then park them. The companies will then gather and restage these devices at the end of the night and stage them again the next morning. Typically, the cost for these is about $1 plus a per minute charge. For a 2-mile trip, it's about a $3 charge. Maximum speed set by most companies is about 15 miles an hour. Here we go. And most set an age limit of 18 years. And helmets are encouraged but not required. Staff conducted public outreach in a number of ways as we developed this program. First, we conducted surveys in the summer, a resident survey and a business survey. On the resident side, a slight majority of residents indicated they would prefer not to see scooters in Chandler. However, when combined with a potential city program limiting the number of scooters, then a minority said they would not want to see scooters in Chandler. On the business side, a majority of respondents indicated they would like to see scooters in Chandler, with many citing that they thought the presence of a program in these scooters could attract new customers to their business. Additionally, we met with City Council Subcommittee in September, conducted targeted outreach to downtown Chandler Community Partnership, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. Held a public meeting in October. 2 residents attended and expressed support for scooters in Chandler. And then the Transportation Commission recommended approval of the program in November. As far as the operating rules, this pertains to the item number 8 on tonight's agenda. Scooter riding would be allowed on bike lanes, in sidewalks unless otherwise posted, and on lower speed roadways. Scooter riders would need to follow all traffic laws. Lights would be required, brakes, and then for the shared mobility devices, a speed limit of 15 miles an hour would be required. Now, as far as the pilot program, this is a licensing program. Scooter companies would be required to enter into a license agreement with the city in order to operate in the city of Chandler. We're looking at a 1-year pilot term with a maximum fleet size of 150 scooters at the onset, and then after 3 months, if the company has followed the rules, they can increase this size to 300 scooters. As far as clustering, we would allow no more than 5 scooters in a group. Unless in the downtown area, we would designate specific parking locations in the downtown area, and all scooters would have to be parked in that area. Otherwise, you can see the rules listed below that scooter parking would have to abide by. The devices would need to be relocated within 2 hours of notice in the case of a scooter that's parked improperly. Otherwise, a fine could be imposed on companies. Data sharing would be required. This would help staff analyze the program as we consider extending or modifying the program at the conclusion of the 1-year pilot period. Insurance and indemnification would be required. And then fees, which are being considered separately as part of Resolution 5300 on Thursdays agenda would be a $3,000 application fee, 10 cents per ride taken, which could equate to about $12,000 to $27,000 annually per company, and then penalty fees as mentioned before. And I did want to note that in the case a company does not comply with program rules, the city does have the ability to terminate these agreements at any time. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I'll start. I just in reading through the three different items, what we're looking at today on action as well as the two study, it did mention a period of time in which if something, they had 2 hours to remove something, if it was where it was placed incorrectly, yet there would be no removal or action from the city for 48 hours. And then, unless again, it was in a right of way, et cetera. I'm just curious of that gap. I realize it would take time to diagnose and move, but if it's not necessarily in an immediate right of way, but it's still in a nuisance spot, that seems to be a long period of time. But I also understand we're not going to use this to have our staff just chasing down scooters. So what is the intermediate between those two if it is not directly in a right of way, but not where it belongs?
Correct, Mayor, good question. So the 48 hours wouldn't apply necessarily in all cases. If the scooter were blocking a sidewalk, staff could immediately relocate it or whatever. But the scooter, certainly staff would have the ability to just move a scooter over, to a new area if it's blocking access. The 48 hours comes into play if a scooter company is not being responsive to relocating or moving a scooter, and the city would need to take further actions, such as maybe even impounding or something like that. But certainly we can look at the terms and conditions and make sure that there's not such a large gap, 2 to 48 hours. I agree. That's a good comment.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions?
Good question, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Jason. It comes down to scoot or not to scoot, right? I'm curious as to the privilege tax that these companies will be paying, how we will track those per use rides. I don't want to see our residents subsidizing their business model with use of streets, sidewalks, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, through the mayor, Councilmember Stewart. So the per ride fee would be tracked. We would have to rely on data from scooter companies. There are third-party vendors that do provide data management services that if we feel we're not getting accurate data, we can work with other companies to try to make sure we're getting our full fee recovery out of that program. But yeah, the fees that we recover from this program could be utilized for infrastructure improvements, managing the program, enforcing these rules. So there's a number of things we can do with that.
Councilmember Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. You answered my first question on how we're going to validate their fee structure. Two things. We do require a helmet for anyone under 18, correct?
Correct. That's how the ordinance is written.
Okay, I just want to verify that because I know that was changed. The other question I have for you is, we used to have these on this off the sidewalk, the old motor scooters and the bikes and now the motorized skateboards. Now we're putting them back on the sidewalk. What's the rationalization?
Yeah, through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando. When that previous ordinance was adopted, it was targeting motorized play vehicles, and it was seen more as a recreational activity, less as a transportation option. These particular devices are viewed more in terms of transportation, getting people from home to jobs, things like that. So in an effort to provide the highest level of safety, sidewalks are seen on many of our high-speed arterial streets as the safest place to ride these. Additionally, I think I mentioned this briefly in the presentation, but if we post an area as no riding in the sidewalk, such as maybe in downtown Chandler where there's a high concentration of pedestrian activity, then scooters would not be permitted on those sidewalks.
It just seemed like we allow bicyclists with a bicycle lane. That's a logical solution there. They're most likely prohibited from going on a sidewalk other than when posted. So, okay, I guess if it's more of a safety factor, I'm okay with it. But again, I think we should watch that a little bit where we're not getting where pedestrian traffic is on a sidewalk, they're not getting inhibited or infringed upon their rights to walk on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions or comments related to this item? Any other questions or comments for our regular meeting of the City Council? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion in a second.
Mayor.
Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. I move for the approval of the consent agenda of all 8 items for a regular meeting Monday, December 9th.
A second. Got a motion and a second.
I'll be voting no on items 2 and 6.
Okay, so noted. All right. All right, council, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously, except for the items 2 and 6, which carries by majority, with Councilmember Orlando dissenting.
All right, thank you, council. This concludes our regular meeting of December 9th. Hello again. Our next item of business here tonight is a study session of December 9th. I'd like to call that to order. And first, we have some scheduled public appearances. City Manager, and I'd also like to invite Councilmember McClymans to come join me.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, I would ask Judge David Fuller to come forward and make his presentation from the Magistrate's Office in regards to service recognitions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'd like to invite Aurelia Salazar to come on up. Mr. Mayor, council members, today we are honoring Aurelia Salazar's 20 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Chandler. Aurelia is skilled in many areas of court operations, including appeals, jury trial management, various courtroom proceedings, payment plans, defensive driving completions, and the debt set-off tax intercept program. This vast knowledge is one of the reasons that Aurelia was promoted to court clerk 2. Aurelia's service doesn't end with her work in the courts. She also volunteers in the community through programs such as iHelp, community redevelopment, back to school drives, and Family Promise. Congratulations, Aurelia, on your 20-year milestone. We look forward to sharing many more years of continued success with you.
This time, I would ask Sandeep Dalakia, our Information Technology Director, to come forward and make his presentation.
Through the mayor and members of the council, this time I'd like to invite Debbie Higuera to come up to the front to receive her recognition award for 25 years of service. Debbie started with the city of Chandler over 25 years ago as a cooperative Office of Education student when she was attending Chandler High School. With that opportunity, Debbie has worked in several capacities within development services and IT to support some of the most widely used enterprise systems. Debbie also participated in many of our more charitable ventures through her time here. Every year, she has been a member of the Adopt a Family group, providing a happy holiday to those who are less fortunate. No matter if it's related to her job or with the people she works with, Debbie's always been there for those who need assistance. We appreciate the years of service that you have spent with the city so far, and we're definitely excited about what the future holds for you here at the city and with working with you. Thank you, Debbie.
Mayor, if you'd like, I'll move into retirement recognitions. All right, so I would ask Ryan Peters, our Government Relations and Policy Manager, to come forward and make the first presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. I'd like to invite Dan Cook to the front, please. Mayor and Council, Dan Cook began his career in Chandler in 1996 as an Assistant Public Works Director. Dan filled roles as the City Engineer, Transportation Manager, and Deputy Public Works Director. Dan led various groups such as streets, traffic, solid waste, airport, transit, engineering, capital projects, real estate, civil plan review, and GIS. He was instrumental in helping the city secure funding to build our network of freeways, roads, and our transit system. Dan is a leader in the region, often a resource for city engineers and the transportation experts. He served as the city's representative at MAG and our PTA Valley Metro committees for many years. He's been lauded for his knowledge, experience, and skills. Dan is also involved in incident response across the nation when engineering expertise is required to safely clean up major disaster areas. Thank you, Dan, for over 23 years of service to our community. We wish you the best in retirement.
Just for the record, Dan has agreed to, in the future, serve on the Transportation Committee.
Mayor, or Vice Mayor, I don't know who's on the dais now, I guess. City Manager, here's a statistic you quoted earlier today, I believe it was you or Ryan, of how much money this man has saved the city of Chandler by getting additional projects through MAG and the federal government. It's phenomenal, and I think it's worth repeating that number
Yes.
again today.
Through the mayor, thank you, Councilmember Orlando. Yes, Dan has worked diligently throughout his career for the city of Chandler and the citizens of this great city, and has, I think, exceeded over $140 million in revenue to the city for transportation projects that would otherwise had to have been funded through taxpayer dollars. So we really will miss Dan and all the efforts he's been able to accomplish down at MAG. Thank you, Dan. Mayor, at this time, I would ask Police Chief Sean Duggan to come forward and make his presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to ask Commander Dave LeBoy to come forward in recognition of his pending retirement after serving 25 years with the city of Chandler. What am I going to do? Everyone's leaving. All right, so a little bit about Dave. Dave actually began his career back in 1995 as a patrol officer and later served in the bike unit. He also served in the gang unit, on the SWAT team, the honor guard, and as a firearms instructor. He was promoted to sergeant in 2005 and was assigned back to patrol, where his team, patrol team, was recognized as the Patrol Team of the Year for enhancing quality of life issues in neighborhoods. As a sergeant, Dave also served as a SWAT team leader and in the professional standards section. In 2009, Dave was promoted to lieutenant and returned to patrol again to manage patrol teams as well as the canine unit. Dave was later assigned to detectives, where he managed the persons crime section, responsible for investigating robberies and homicides and family crimes and financial crimes and computer crimes. And then back in 2014, Dave was selected to manage the special investigations section, which included the narcotics unit, the human trafficking unit, the gang unit, the criminal apprehension unit, and the SWAT team. In 2015, Dave was promoted to commander and led the Desert Breeze Precinct, the Criminal Investigations Bureau, and most recently, the Operational Support Bureau. And throughout Dave's career, he has served the city by participating in numerous citywide work groups and committees, and has helped to develop collaborative working relationships with all of our regional partners. And as a recognized leader in our organization, Dave has helped shape the culture of our department, and he's led by example throughout his entire career and that is an incredible legacy to leave. So Dave, congratulations on 25 years of dedicated service to our city and our police department, and I wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Our next recognition has to do with the Digital Cities Award. Matt Burdick is our Communication and Public Affairs Director, is going to lead us in this.
I'll ask Sandeep Valakia and Ann Patterson-James to come forward and please accept this award on behalf of the city. Mayor, members of the council, the Center for Digital Government announced the city of Chandler among the top digital cities in America for leveraging technology to enhance city services, tackle challenges, and advance priorities. Chandler was recognized during the National League of Cities Conference last month for making technology a driver of better, smarter, and responsive services and policies. This award acknowledges who we are, a safe community that connects people, chooses innovation, and inspires excellence. Congratulations.
Our next recognition is for the American Chuckwagon Association Event Award for the Chandler Chuckwagon Cook-Off. I'd like to invite Kim Moyers, who is our Cultural Development Director, Jody Craigo, who is our museum administrator, and certainly Dave McDowell, the president of the Partners of Tumbleweed Ranch and the co-founder of this event.
Mayor, Council, each year the American Chuckwagon Association presents awards designed to honor those outstanding individuals, teams, and events. This past November, the Chandler Chuckwagon Cook-Off celebrated its 10th anniversary. Over those 10 years, it's grown from just 4 wagons to one of the largest chuckwagon events in the Southwest. In recognition for 10 years of events and the commitment to continuing to educate this unique part of our history, the American Chuckwagon Association has awarded the Chandler Chuckwagon Cook-Off the prestigious 2019 Event Award. This award goes to the event that best exemplifies what competitors feel is the best ran Chuckwagon event. The Chuckwagon Cook-Off beat out over 26 nationally recognized events to earn this top spot. Congratulations to the Chandler Museum and the Partners of Tumbleweed Ranch for all their hard work and dedication for presenting this signature city event.
I did confirm with Dave, and he told me that yeehaw is an appropriate statement right now. I was there on Friday night, and it was easily the best dining experience in all of Chandler, with the different chuck wagons offering little bits of what they would be serving. So I look forward to next November and our 11th annual event, correct? Yes. Excellent. Our next recognition is for our City Day sponsors. So Stephen Erno from Neighborhood Preservation's Manager will lead us in this recognition.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So For Our City Day is an annual collaboration of the City of Chandler residents, local businesses, nonprofits, city staff, and neighborhoods coming together to build community and instill neighborhood pride. On Saturday, October 26, volunteers gathered in the Chandler Manor neighborhood for the 9th annual For Our City Day event. This was our largest event to date, mobilizing over 1,000 volunteers to complete 37 projects, which led to an investment of over $150,000 in the Chandler community. This event could not happen without the partnerships and commitment from our local businesses and nonprofit community. And tonight we'd like to recognize some of the sponsors that helped ensure the success of this event. So first I'd like to invite up Victor Hardy. He is the chair of for our city Chandler to join us up here. And then I'd also like to then our attending sponsors. We have Jeff Williams from the Salvation Army. If you can please come up and join us. We have Samson Zetto from Zovio, and he can join us up here as well. Thank you. And then Resurrection Street Ministries is represented by Bill Berry, Dan Walterson, and Valerie Young Grimm. We'd also like to recognize our sponsors that couldn't be here tonight, including A&A Materials, Cafe Valley Bakery, the Salvation Army did show up, and Sherwin-Williams. Thank you to all of our sponsors for their commitment to For Our City Day and our Chandler community. We really appreciate all the support and the impact that you make in our community, so thank you.
Next on our agenda is Deborah O'Connell with comments regarding our softball facilities. Deborah, come on up.
Deborah O'Connell, 4643 South Oleander Drive. Dear Honorable Mayor and Council, I stand before you representing Chandler residents. In 2008, citizens voted 85% of the vote to build a youth softball complex at Tumbleweed Recreational Park. The recession hit, lasted many years. Since then, though, the city has approximately built 14 multiplex sports fields for soccer, football, and lacrosse. 2016, the City Council hired a consultant firm which redesigned the vision for the general plan for the entire city of Chandler. In this process, all prior citizens voted on resolutions were dissolved. Unfortunately, we as a softball community were completely unaware of the council's removal of the youth softball complex that was voted and passed by 85% of the votes casted by city residents. In 2017, we revisited this. You have a letter from Brandy Brostein. She was a parent, and she inquired as to what the status was with the softball complex. The response from the recreation manager is that the master plan for Tumbleweed and Mesquite Groves Park still had 4 softball fields included in the design, but we were also alerted that other groups were competing for this space. This email indicated to us that our youth softball complex was still alive in the master plan. We later followed the advice of the city in 2018, and we utilized the budget survey process to go ahead and request capital improvements and suggestions. During this time, we requested overwhelmingly that the dangerous and dilapidated fields and park at Foley Park be remedied and addressed. We also requested again and reiterated the softball complex that we had expected was still alive and promised to the youth, to the girls. The youth recreational softball, ages 4 years to 18, utilizes Foley Park. Foley Park has the fastest increase in the homeless population and increase in drug usage. This is not going to go away. There are a lot of factors to encourage this in Foley Park. This is what our young girls contend with either at night during practice or during games during the day. These examples have gotten much worse and increased with every season. The girls brought pictures to you. They speak for themselves. A couple things I'd like to highlight that we didn't catch on pictures are women and men witnessed getting high in the bathrooms repeatedly. A woman high on meth, as you see, meth tweaking while softball games are going around with a knife. A man starting a fire with pine needles and debris. Umpire,
Excuse me, Deb. Can we give her another 2 minutes, please? Thank you.
I don't hear so well, so I apologize.
Go ahead. I was just giving you some additional time that went off.
Okay, I'm sorry. A man started a fire with pine needle and debris, and an umpire happened to go by, middle of broad daylight, and stomped it out. Women half naked taking showers in the sinks in the bathroom. We had a mandatory park evacuation because of a shooter, an active shooter a couple blocks away. We've heard gunshots at night where coaches have stopped practices and stayed with their girls until parents could pick them up because of audible gunshots in the area. Gang-related graffiti. Multiple syringes with needles attached. As a nurse, I can tell you, HIV, which causes AIDS, lives in that syringe for 7 days. 6 days. Hepatitis B lives for 6 days. Hepatitis C lives for 3 weeks. We're exposing these young girls to incurable diseases. Numerous police officers have commented, I would never let my daughter play in this league because it is too dangerous. I'm sure we could come up with lots of other examples. We are here tonight to demand that our female youth deserve better than these dangerous conditions at Foley Park and request that the Honorable Mayor and his council build a safe softball complex for our girls. With our limited time tonight, we're unable to dissect line by line item the disparities between the boys' baseball fields and the girls' softball fields. One disparity I will mention is that approximately 30 fields are available for boys rental for baseball fields, and there's about 12 for girls' softball fields. These few discrepancies are unacceptable to us as citizens of this fine city of Chandler, which we are very proud of. We're fed up with waiting and beginning to explore and document inequities conflicting with Title IX. We have submitted 396 surveys online. I believe you have that. We have 431 more signatures here that we'll give to our Honorable Mayor for a total of 848 signatures that we were able to compile in a matter of a couple weeks. Again, we're requesting a softball complex constructed at Tumbleweed that's safe for our young girls. Now I'd like Ella's a young lady that just has a couple of words she'd like to share.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Ella Wyckoff, and I have been in the league for 9 seasons, and I absolutely love the sport. But I have always been upset with the fact that we girls deserve better softball fields. I feel safe most of the time, but there have been moments where I fear for my safety. It has been proven unsafe to go to the restrooms alone due to threatening graffiti and unsafe objects, such as discarded needles. Last season, we had to evacuate the fields due to a shooting in the area. These conditions are unacceptable to play on. It seems as though a lot of money and care is taken into the boys' baseball teams and not our own softball teams. Why are we not providing the same opportunities to our girls that we are giving the boys? You are giving a message to our girls saying that we're not worth it. How can you look at me and say that I'm not good enough? I beg you to please think of your daughters, nieces, and granddaughters and all of the impressionable young girls in our community and give us the same opportunities that you have given the boys. Thank you.
Thank you all. I do know that we are currently undergoing a new parks master I can't address that, but I do know that we are currently undergoing a new parks master plan. I do know that we have plans. I don't know the current schedule, but I do agree this is important, and I want to thank you for coming to our meeting tonight. So, Council, anyone else?
Mayor.
Councilmember Orlando.
Mayor, as you know, I've been intimately involved with this organization. They've been around since 1976. They are the premier softball league in this, and I challenge it, not only in this state, but in the Western region. The many girls that come out of this league that have played in D1 schools is phenomenal. I've been umpiring this league for about 9-10 years now. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, as many of you know, so I've seen some things in my lifetime. But I've also witnessed many of these activities that were not even mentioned today that's going on in the park. Now, I know our police have been there. I know we've put money into these parks last year's budget and this year's budget. And I know that they've put money into the fields themselves for safety and security. But as we go through the CIP process, we have to really take a hard look at what we could do with these fields. And maybe, city manager, I know you're itching to get in, maybe there's some interim fields we could use in the future for this. I mean, it's only 2.5 fields if you think about it. It's 2 major fields plus a minor league. And they do softball anywhere between T-ball all the way up to 18 years old. So, and they have 2 seasons, unlike baseball, it's 1 season. There's a lot of, hopefully there's some solutions to this, both in short term as well as some long term. I guess that's the bottom line here.
Mayor? Young lady, I meant to write your name down. What was your name? I will promise you that there is no discrepancy between, I've got a daughter, and there's no question on whether or not we think there's a difference between men and women or girls and boys, not even one iota. So I want you to feel comfortable with that, and I'm really glad that you said what you said, but I can assure you that I will speak for myself and probably the rest of council that that is not an issue. And we'll address this, and we'll talk about it with staff, and we'll figure out a way to make all of this better. And if that includes including the police chief and making it safer, we'll do that as well.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. Council, there's we've already have had presentations and conversations on items number 2, items number 14. On our study session, we've got a handful of others. Item number 6, Councilmember Orlando, you have a question.
Mayor, if we could take 6 to expedite this, 6 and 12 together.
Sure. So item number 6 and 12. Mr. Knutson, thank you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, not 12. I apologize. Number 10.
6 and 10. All right.
6 and 10. No, sit down. Knutson, you got it. 6 and 10.
Proceed, Councilmember.
I'm waiting for staff.
Kim's coming over.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Hey, listen, this is great stuff here. I have no problem with, what we're trying to do here to keep it open for the public, and I get all that. My biggest concern is, as you know, we have free parking, which is great. Other municipalities are charging. Other organizations are, in fact, not even allowing municipalities to even go into these parking structures. My concern here is on 3-2, where we say, and I'm just on this particular one, but it's a general question, we're leaving it up to the developer on a first-come, first-served basis to allocate our parking. Now, if we look at the one by the senior center, my concern is, okay, they're giving us 10 space in the bottom floor. I get that. But if, as our users start coming into this Class A building, they're going to want the premium parking spots. Where do our elderly go? I mean, they're going to put them on the 3rd floor, away from the elevators. So my concern is here is I think staff from now, for me to be comfortable with these two, staff needs to put some stronger language in here that will protect the city on where we put some of these spaces. And I don't want to leave it up to the developer who is financially incentivized to give the best parking spots to his best developer. It's just a natural progression of things. People won't park there because they'll see reserved for Matt Orlando's, I don't know, construction activity. They won't park there. They'll park another spot even after hours. That's my major concern with these two issues.
Understood. Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, specifically for the new Alexander, which is the First Credit Union building, we will have 60 confirmed spots. 10 of them will be outlined specifically for the senior center. We did work with community services to find out how many of the seniors use those spaces and how many we needed to reserve, and then how many would be open for others. We also talked with the owners, George Oliver, and the majority of the spots, about 80 to 85%, will not be reserved at all. They will only have somewhere around 20% of stalls that are reserved. So it will remain a first come, first serve for the other 400 parking spaces. We've also talked with community services about letting their patrons know, specifically with the senior center, that there's parking that's just to the east of the senior center too, which shares parking with the library, to let them know that they can park there as well. So we've tried to make as many concessions for that parking garage that we could without identifying those spots. When we looked at the other 90, when we used to have 91 spots, those were split up between all 5 floors. So we did not have all 91 spots or even half of those spots on the first floor. They were disseminated all across, and that's what we intend to happen with this agreement as well.
So, and I hear the intent where it is in writing. That's what I'm looking for. Where is in writing that they will distribute equally the parking spots throughout the levels of parking? Then I feel more comfortable. Because right now, the way I read this, again, I could lease all the bottom spaces, and the 3rd floor is for my senior and elderly. And it may be way over from the elevator. And now we're telling our elder we have to go use spots in another area. Again, these are the residents that paid for at least one of the spots, the $20 million one we just did. This one here, we're renting, I understand that, but we're renters. So we should have a right to determine what, at least some say, in what spots we allow for our elderly as well as our citizens. So that's what I'm driving at. So if we get some different language in here, I'll feel more comfortable with this.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Kim.
Is that for item 10 as well? Do you have something
Please.
for item 10, or is that for both of them?
No, that's fine. That's, like I said, that took them together because of that. You had the same, basically the same language in there, that first come developer will at his discretion or her discretion, and that bothers me. Particularly, even more so, the senior centers is one issue, but more so the one across the street where the hotel could be there, they're gonna want the premium spots, and the users will want the premium spots, and our residents are relegated to the 4th floor.
Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, for the Oregon Street parking garage, we have a relationship, or excuse me, a contract with Spike that they can have at full capacity up to 730 of the 930 spots, which will leave us at all times a maximum of 200 spots if they're at capacity. We've identified where those 200 spots will be, and we've identified 50% of them on the ground floor, and then we've identified on the north side and the south side of the garage the entire rows from floors 2 through 5.
And again, is that in writing?
Yes, sir.
It's in this document?
It's in the diagram that's attached to the development agreement.
All right, I didn't search that. I heard earlier today from staff that there was a north and a south, but again, I wanted to make sure it was equally distributed throughout the, so
Yes,
then
sir, it
we're
is.
only talking about this one then?
Correct.
Okay, the senior centers one.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Item number 20, Councilmember Orlando.
Let's, Mayor, again, interest of time, 20 and 29. These are really good action items that are going on with our Parks and Recs program. As you know, that's been one of our key areas in the city of Chandler in our strategic plan. So I figure it's a good, feel-good story what we're trying to do here. Again, a strategy, and asked our staff to give us a couple-minute presentation where we're trying to go with this.
If you could give us a very high-level, brief presentation. Thank you, Andy.
Sure, absolutely. Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, starting with item number 20, that is an agreement with Greenplay for a multi-generational center feasibility study. And this is really a follow-up to a senior needs assessment that was completed a few years ago. And in that needs assessment, one of the action items was to go and explore the option of creating a new multi-gen center within Chandler. And so this is following up on that, and it's a simple study that will be looking at our existing facilities, what we currently have in terms of amenities, and what we are lacking in terms of other cities in the valley and across the nation. And they'll be making recommendations in terms of locations and things that should be included within that center.
What's the time framing on that, Andy?
So the contract itself is for is 180 days. So we anticipate it'll probably take up to that full time to complete.
So hopefully there's some time frame there to maybe for CIP this year or at least next year's?
Yeah, it'll probably go into next year's by the time this is done and we work. There is a public process. We certainly want to get the feedback from the community. So more than likely, it will be something that we'll be looking for future.
Thank you for shortening that. I know council had expressed that earlier this year about consolidating that time frame. So thanks for working with the consultant.
Moving on to item 29, the parks master plan. There is a presentation. It's only 30 slides. I'll get through. Okay, just kidding. It's like 4 or 5. We'll go really quick. Really, this is just to focus on what is the objective of our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And really, the broad view is it's going to look at our existing parks, our amenities, and what we currently are offering our residents, and also working with as we're getting close to our build out of parks, what those future parks, our remaining parks should look like and what we should be building in them. It's also going to incorporate your strategic framework that you have passed to make sure that we're following your direction and meeting your goals. It will work with us for our future, for renovation projects, and a very important part of it is really going to help be a guide on future expenditures for park improvements, leading us there. So what is going to be in it? Here are the major sections that will be addressed within this master plan. First, it's going to be citizen demand. What does the residents want and need within our park service, our standards, our benchmarks, looking at local, regional, national trends. Again, looking at our amenities, what we have and what we are lacking. What we heard earlier, it is going to focus on our athletic fields, particularly for our youth. It's going to look at what we currently have per sport and what is needed and projected in the future that we will need and where we should potentially build it. Demographics and economic benefits of our park system. It'll talk about sports tourism, what it would be a Chandler market for sports tourism, our indoor recreation, which we just talked about. One of the reasons that this is a lengthy process is we're also doing an asset management plan within the master plan. And basically, they're going to go to every single park that we have, and they're going to look at every single amenity within those parks, and they will be able to do a condition analysis, a life cycle, and help us do better planning on our replacements and what we have in our parks. Maintenance standards, smart parks, technology and trends, and focusing how do we make our parks destination parks, places where people want to go that are within, near to their house. You can see at the bottom, the most important part of this is really the community engagement piece. There will be a website that will be developed specific to this project that will be updated real time that residents can go to, they can provide feedback on. We're doing a survey that will have at least 500 residents participate on, hopefully more. And then we'll also be at the Ostrich Festival where we'll have live people out there taking actual in-person interviews and getting feedback at that large event. There'll be 6 public forums. We have divided the city into 4 quadrants. We will be holding these meetings in each quadrant to drive and hope and improve our engagement. There'll be focus group meetings, particularly with our youth sporting organizations to hear what their needs are for the future and currently, so that we can address that. There'll be 4 presentations to the Parks and Recreation Board. And also, very importantly, there will be many times for you as council to receive updates and to provide your direction, feedback, and help us as we plan for future budgets. Kind of a rough calendar is our community outreach will be the first phase of this. That will starting right away in January, and will go until mid-spring, late spring. From there, we'll have recommendations and priorities set, and that will take until the fall. And then we'll have final draft documents for you with pending approval coming December or January a year from now. And with that, any questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Orlando.
And I just want to share with you my personal opinions of what you and your staff are doing for our parks and recreational programs. It's one of the best in the valley, and with you at the helm, I know it's going to be better. So thank you for everyone, all the way down to the parks maintenance guys, for what you do to keep our parks safe and clean. We really appreciate it.
It's certainly a very, very good staff who does a very, very good job every day. They show up.
Councilmember Stewart, you had also had a question or comments related to this?
No, well, that took care of a lot of those questions. Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up. I think it's a shame we couldn't have had that before what we just talked about with the ladies softball that wasn't here.
I will say I did talk with Ms. O'Connell, and she is aware of this and certainly encourage them, and they will be at the seat, especially when we're doing our focus group. We need to hear their feedback. We want to make it right for all groups, and we want them and look forward to them being involved in this process.
I appreciate that.
Right. Any additional comments on this? All right. Last one that was called in advance, item number 28, Councilmember Orlando.
Oh, Alma School Road. Good news, huh?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando. This contract represents the first phase of Alma School Road widening. This design contract will be for the city's portion, which will be from Maplewood south to Germain. At the same time, developers will be working on the section from the 202 north to Pecos. We've got Public Works and Utilities, as well as Development Services have been working with the developers on the north side to accommodate that expansion as well. So it's a beginning, and we've got phase 1 soon to start, with phase 2 and phase 3 in the coming years.
So have we finalized the southern portion of Alma School Road yet with the financial aspects? We're still working that.
The financing for the piece from Maplewood to Germain, we believe, is not a very large amount, because we'll be widening to the center. So there's not an awful lot to be done there, which is a great thing for us. We're going to do our best to widen the road through the intersection to the south to provide some connectivity to the south of that intersection. But as design moves along, we'll be better able to affirm what needs to be done in the intersection and through the intersection. But that's really the costly part of that project, is the intersection itself. So I don't know how much we'll be able to do at the intersection, but we're going to do our best to get the widening done just a little bit south, so there's a good transition.
Good, good. Yeah, I take that every day, as you know, 2 or 3 times, and it does get a little hairy coming in, especially when you're coming in from the left lane out. So I appreciate it. The residents appreciate in that area as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, any other items to be called in tonight? Okay. I want to take a moment of mayoral privilege before we close this out, and might have more to share on Thursday, but I've read all over social media, former Mayor Coy Payne passed away yesterday. Coy was a great man, a great mayor, and he helped me as a young man on a research project back when I first moved here over 30 years ago, and he gave me several hours of his time, and I was very grateful. But we'll be passing on more information as we hear it, but if you're familiar, friends with the Payne family, please extend your condolences. Council, we have an exec session following this meeting. So with that, I'll conclude our study session.